The cold November wind cut through Lily's thin jacket like a knife. She pulled her sleeves down over her hands and tried to ignore the growling in her stomach. It had been 2 days since she last ate a real meal. The half-eaten sandwich she found behind the bakery yesterday didn't count. At 17, Lily never imagined she would be walking these dark streets looking for her next meal. 3 months ago, she had a warm bed, food on the table, and dreams of playing piano at famous concert halls. Now she was lucky if she found a dry place to sleep. Her fingers were numb from the cold, but she flexed them anyway. These hands used to dance across piano keys for hours every day. Now they shook from hunger and cold. Sometimes at night she would press her fingers against her leg and pretend she was playing. It was the only thing that helped her fall asleep. The smell of roasted chicken and fresh bread made her stop walking. She looked up at the bright sign above her head. Giovanni's Fine Dining. Through the large windows she could see families, laughing around tables covered in white cloth. Crystal glasses caught the warm light from the chandeliers hanging above. In the corner of the restaurant, she spotted something that made her heart race. A beautiful black piano sat near the windows. Its polished surface reflected the dancing flames from the candles on nearby tables. A man in a suit was playing soft music while people ate their expensive meals. Lily's grandmother had taught her that music could open doors when nothing else would. When you play from your heart, she used to say, people listen with theirs. Maybe, just maybe, these people would listen too. She walked around to the back of the restaurant where she could hear voices and the clatter of dishes. The kitchen door was open and warm air mixed with delicious smells poured out into the alley. Her stomach cramped harder. 3 men in white chef uniforms were taking a smoking break near the dumpster. They looked tired and stressed. The dinner rush was clearly wearing them down. Lily took a deep breath and walked toward them. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure they could hear it. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The tallest man, who seemed to be in charge, looked her up and down. His eyes took in her worn-out sneakers with holes in the toes, her faded jeans with patches on the knees, and her jacket that was too big and had seen better days. "We don't have any food to give away, kid," he said before she could even ask her question. "Try the mission down on 5th Street. "I'm not asking for charity," Lily said, finding her voice. "I saw you have a piano inside. I can play, really well. Maybe I could play some music for your customers in exchange for a meal." The 3 men looked at each other and burst out laughing. The sound echoed off the brick walls of the alley and made Lily's cheeks burn with shame. "You think this is some kind of amateur night?" the head chef asked, still chuckling. "This is Giovanni's. We serve the richest people in the city. Our piano player went to music school for 8 years and charges $200 an hour." One of the younger cooks wiped tears from his eyes. "Did you hear that, Tony? She wants to play piano for food. What's next? Dancing for dessert?" They laughed even harder. Lily felt smaller with each cruel word. "Look, kid," the head chef said, trying to catch his breath. "I'm sure you can bang out Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star or whatever, but this isn't a place for beginners. Our customers expect quality. They pay good money for it." "But I really can play," Lily insisted. "I studied for 12 years. I know classical pieces, jazz, everything. Please just give me a chance." The men had stopped laughing now, but their faces showed they didn't believe her for a second. 12 years? Tony, the younger cook, said with a smirk. "What are you, 17? You telling me you've been playing piano since you were 5? "Yes," Lily said simply. "My grandmother taught me. She was a piano teacher." "Well, where's Grandma now?" the head chef asked. "Why isn't she feeding you?" Lily's throat tightened. "She passed away 6 months ago." The men's faces softened slightly, but not enough to change their minds. "I'm sorry about your grandmother, kid. I really am," the head chef said. "But this isn't how the world works. You can't just walk into a fancy restaurant and expect to play piano for food. Even if you were good enough, which I doubt, we have insurance issues, customer expectations, a reputation to protect." "The shelter serves dinner until 8, Tony added, checking his watch. "You better hurry if you want to make it." Lily's hands clenched into fists at her sides. These men had no idea what she had lost. They couldn't know that she had been accepted to one of the most famous music schools in the country. They didn't understand that her fingers had once moved across keys, like magic, bringing tears to the eyes of everyone who heard her play. But how could she explain any of that? Who would believe a homeless teenager in torn clothes had once been considered a musical prodigy? "I understand," she said quietly. "I'm sorry to bother you." She turned to walk away, but desperation made her stop and try one more time. "What if I just played one song?" she asked, turning back. "Just one. If you don't think I'm good enough after that, I'll leave and never come back." The head chef was already shaking his head. "Kid, you're not listening. This isn't about whether you're good or not. This is about business. We can't have random people off the street touching our piano. It's worth more than most people make in a year. Plus, what happens when the real piano player shows up?" Tony added. "We're supposed to tell him some homeless girl took his job?" The words hit Lily like a punch to the stomach. Homeless girl. Is that all she was now? All anyone would ever see when they looked at her? She remembered the last time she performed. It was at her high school graduation ceremony 6 months ago. She had played Chopin's Minute Waltz and received a standing ovation. Teachers had tears in their eyes. Her grandmother had been so proud. Now these men saw her as nothing more than a nuisance, a problem to be sent away. "The mission closes at 9, the head chef said, glancing at his watch again. "You really should get going." Through the kitchen door, Lily could hear the piano music from inside the restaurant. The current player was good, but she could hear small mistakes, places where the emotion was missing. Her fingers itched to show these men what real music sounded like, but they had made their decision. In their minds, she was just another street kid looking for a handout. They couldn't see past her appearance to the talent underneath. "Thank you for your time," Lily said with as much dignity as she could manage. She walked away slowly, hoping one of them might change their mind and call her back. But the only sound behind her was the kitchen door slamming shut and the muffled laughter of men who had no idea they had just turned away a musical genius. Lily walked slowly down the alley, her head down and her heart heavy. The laughter from the kitchen still echoed in her ears. She had been so sure that if she could just get them to listen, they would understand. But they saw her clothes, her dirty hair, her desperate situation, and made up their minds before she even spoke. She was almost at the street when she heard a voice behind her. "Wait just a moment, dear." Lily turned around to see an elderly woman stepping out of a side door of the restaurant. She was probably in her 70s, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Her black coat looked expensive, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who was used to being respected. "I couldn't help but overhear what happened back there," the woman said, walking closer. "You said you play piano?" Lily nodded, suddenly feeling embarrassed again. This woman had probably heard the whole humiliating conversation. "Yes, ma'am, I used to play. I still can, but..." "But what, child?" "I don't look like the kind of person who belongs at a piano anymore," Lily said honestly. "At least that's what people think when they see me." The older woman studied her carefully. There was something different about the way she looked at Lily. Not with pity or judgment, but with genuine curiosity. "I'm Helen," the woman said. "I was having dinner inside when I heard quite a commotion in the kitchen. Those men were laughing rather loudly about something." Lily felt her cheeks burn again. "They were laughing at me. I asked if I could play piano in exchange for a meal, and they thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard." Helen's expression hardened slightly. "How unfortunate, and rather unprofessional of them, I must say." "It's okay," Lily said quickly. "I understand why. They said no. Look at me. I wouldn't trust me with an expensive piano either." Helen said thoughtfully. "Tell me, what pieces do you know? What did you study for 12 years? Lily was surprised by the question. Most adults either dismissed her completely or asked her about her living situation. But Helen seemed genuinely interested in her musical background. "I started with basic classical pieces when I was 5, Lily explained. Beginner Bach, simple Mozart. But my grandmother pushed me to learn more difficult pieces as I got older. By the time I was 10, I was playing Chopin, Beethoven, Rachmaninoff. She said I had natural talent, but talent meant nothing without hard work. Helen's eyebrows raised slightly. Rachmaninoff? Which pieces? Piano Concerto No. 2 is my favorite, Lily said, her voice growing stronger as she talked about music. The second movement especially. It's so emotional. It made my grandmother cry every time I played it. Indeed, it is emotional, Helen agreed. And quite difficult technically. What about Chopin? Oh, I loved Chopin, Lily said, her eyes lighting up for the first time in days. The ballades, the nocturnes, the etudes. My grandmother said I played Ballade No. 1 like I was telling a story with my hands. Helen was quiet for a long moment, just watching Lily's face as she talked about music. Finally, she spoke. I have a rather unusual proposition for you, dear. Lily's heart jumped. What kind of proposition? Well, it seems our regular piano player called in sick this evening, Helen said. Giovanni asked me if I knew anyone who could fill in for tonight. I told him I might have someone in mind. You mean me? Lily asked, hardly believing what she was hearing. Perhaps, Helen said carefully. But I need to know you're not wasting my time. I have a reputation to protect, you understand? I can't recommend just anyone to play at Giovanni's. Lily nodded eagerly. I understand. What do you need me to do? Helen looked around the alley and seemed to make a decision. Come with me, she led Lily through the side door and down a narrow hallway. They passed storage rooms filled with wine bottles and linens before arriving at a small office. In the corner sat an old upright piano, probably used for staff meetings or special events. It's not much, Helen said, gesturing to the piano. But it's in tune. I'd like you to play something for me, just one piece. If you're as good as you claim to be, I'll speak to Giovanni about letting you play in the dining room tonight. Lily's hands were shaking as she sat down at the piano bench. The keys felt familiar under her fingers, like greeting an old friend after a long separation. She hadn't played a real piano in 3 months, not since she'd been forced to sell her grandmother's beautiful baby grand. What would you like me to play? She asked. Whatever speaks to you, Helen said, settling into a chair nearby. Music should come from the heart, don't you think? Lily closed her eyes and thought about her grandmother. She remembered the last piece they had worked on together before the cancer got too bad. It was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Opus 9 No. 2, a piece full of gentle sadness and quiet hope. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes floated through the small room like a whispered prayer. Lily had played this piece hundreds of times, but tonight it felt different. All the pain of the last few months, all the loneliness and fear and desperate hope flowed through her fingers into the music. She played the melody with a tenderness that spoke of love and loss. Her left hand provided a steady accompaniment while her right hand sang the beautiful, haunting tune. When she reached the section where Chopin had written in elaborate decorations and trills, her fingers moved with the precision of someone who had spent years perfecting every detail. But this wasn't just technical skill. This was music that came from somewhere deep inside, from a place where words couldn't reach. She thought about her grandmother's hands guiding hers when she was small. She thought about the dreams they had shared, the hours they had spent together at the piano, the way music had been their special language. As the piece drew to a close, Lily played the final notes with such gentle beauty that the silence afterward felt sacred. When she opened her eyes, Helen was staring at her with an expression of complete amazement. My goodness, Helen whispered. Where on earth did you learn to play like that? My grandmother taught me, Lily said simply. She said music wasn't about showing off. It was about sharing your soul with other people. Helen was quiet for a long moment, just looking at Lily with new eyes. Dear child, she finally said, you have a gift, a real gift. I haven't heard playing like that in quite some time. Does that mean? Lily began hopefully. It means, Helen said, standing up with purpose, that I'm going to have a very serious conversation with Giovanni, and if those kitchen staff give us any trouble, they'll have to answer to me. For the first time in months, Lily felt a spark of real hope. Maybe, just maybe, her grandmother had been right. Maybe music really could open doors when nothing else. Would Helen march through the restaurant like a woman on a mission? Lily followed close behind, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. The elegant dining room was even more beautiful up close. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables where well-dressed people enjoyed their expensive meals. At the back corner, Giovanni himself was wiping down tables. He was a short, round man with kind eyes and flour dusted on his apron. When he saw Helen approaching with Lily, his eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Mrs. Richardson," he said with a thick Italian accent. "What can I do for you? Is everything all right with your dinner?" "The dinner was perfect as always, Giovanni," Helen said firmly. "But I understand you have a problem tonight. Your piano player is sick, yes?" Giovanni nodded, looking embarrassed. "Yes, unfortunately. Roberto called an hour ago. Very sick with fever. I had to tell the customers we would have no music tonight. Some of them were not happy about this." "Well, I have a solution," Helen said, putting her hand on Lily's shoulder. "This young lady is an accomplished pianist. I've heard her play myself, and she's exactly what you need." Giovanni looked at Lily with the same expression the kitchen staff had worn. His eyes took in her worn clothes and nervous face. "Mrs. Richardson, with all respect, this is not, how do I say, this is not the type of establishment where what?" Helen asked, her voice sharp. "Where talented musicians can share their gift. Since when?" No, Giovanni said quickly, clearly not wanting to offend one of his best customers. "Is not about talent, is about appearance, image. You understand?" Lily felt her face burn with shame again. She started to back away. "It's okay, Mrs. Richardson. I understand. Maybe this was a bad idea." But Helen grabbed her arm gently. "Nonsense, Giovanni. I've been coming to this restaurant for 15 years. Have I ever steered you wrong?" "No, ma'am, never," Giovanni admitted. "Then trust me now," Helen said. "Give her 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. If she doesn't meet your standards, I'll personally apologize to every customer in here." Giovanni looked around the dining room. Several tables were glancing over, clearly wondering what the conversation was about. In the corner, the beautiful grand piano sat silent and waiting. "5 minutes?" he asked uncertainly. "5 minutes," Helen confirmed. Giovanni sighed deeply. "Okay, 5 minutes, but if the customers complain, they won't," Helen said confidently. As they walked toward the piano, Lily's legs felt like jelly. Every person in the restaurant was watching now. She could hear whispered conversations and saw people pointing in her direction. A woman at a nearby table actually gasped when she saw Lily's appearance. "Maybe I can't do this," Lily whispered to Helen. "What if I mess up? What if I forget the pieces?" "Listen to me, child," Helen said quietly. "Music isn't about what you're wearing or where you come from. It's about what's in your heart. Show them what's in your heart." Lily sat down at the piano bench, and the restaurant fell completely silent. Even the waiters stopped moving. Everyone was staring at this strange girl in torn clothes who dared to touch their expensive piano. Her hands were trembling as she placed them on the keys. She could feel the weight of every stare, every judgment, every expectation. Some people had their phones out, probably ready to record her failure. She closed her eyes and tried to remember her grandmother's voice. "When you sit at the piano, everything else disappears. There's only you and the music. Let the music speak for you." Lily took a deep breath and began to play. She chose Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor. It was one of the most challenging pieces in her repertoire, but also one of the most beautiful. The opening notes were soft and mysterious, like a question being asked in the darkness. At first, her fingers felt stiff and uncertain. 3 months without practice had left them rusty. But as the melody developed, muscle memory took over. Her hands remembered every nuance, every delicate touch that her grandmother had taught her. The first section of the ballade was like a gentle conversation. Lily's right hand sang the melody, while her left provided a subtle accompaniment. The music spoke of longing and hope, of dreams that seemed just out of reach. She could sense the change in the room even with her eyes closed. The whispered conversations had stopped. The clinking of silverware had ceased. Even the kitchen staff had emerged from the back to listen. As the piece moved into its more dramatic sections, Lily's playing grew stronger and more confident. Her fingers flew across the keys with incredible precision. The music built to powerful climaxes that made the crystal glasses on nearby tables vibrate with sound. But it wasn't just technical skill that captivated the audience. Every note was infused with genuine emotion. Lily played like someone who had lived through heartbreak and loss, who understood what it meant to have dreams shattered and rebuilt. The middle section of the ballad was playful and light, like sunlight, breaking through storm clouds. Lily's face, which had been tense with concentration, softened into something approaching joy. For these few minutes, she wasn't homeless or hungry or desperate. She was just a girl sharing the music that lived in her soul. When the piece reached its final thunderous climax, Lily put everything she had into it. Her whole body moved with the music. Her fingers struck the keys with passion and power that seemed impossible from someone so small and fragile-looking. The final notes rang out through the restaurant like church bells, pure and clear and impossibly beautiful. When the last echo faded away, the silence was so complete that Lily could hear her own heartbeat. She opened her eyes and looked around the dining room. Every single person was staring at her with their mouths open. A woman at a front table had tears streaming down her face. A man near the window was gripping his wife's hand so tightly his knuckles were white. Then, from somewhere in the back, someone began to clap. Slowly at first, then faster. Others joined in until the entire restaurant erupted in applause. People were standing up shouting, "Bravo!" and "Magnificent!" Lily sat frozen at the piano bench, unable to believe what was happening. These same people who had stared at her with disgust just minutes before were now giving her a standing ovation. Giovanni pushed through the crowd with tears in his eyes. "Madonna mia," he said, shaking his head in amazement. "In 30 years of this restaurant, I never hear anything like this. Never." Helen appeared at Lily's side, beaming with pride. "I told you they would listen," she said quietly. A man in an expensive suit approached the piano. "Excuse me, miss," he said. "I'm William Chen. I run a music foundation in the city. Could I possibly speak with you? What you just did, that was extraordinary." More people crowded around, all wanting to talk to this mysterious girl who had just transformed their evening. But Lily could barely hear them. She was still lost in the afterglow of the music, still feeling the echo of her grandmother's voice, saying, "Well done, my dear. Well done." For the first time in months, she felt like herself again. Not a homeless girl begging for scraps, but a musician with a gift worth sharing, and judging by the faces around her, the world was finally ready to listen. 2 hours later, Lily found herself sitting in a quiet corner booth at Giovanni's, staring at the most incredible meal she had ever seen. Giovanni had insisted on bringing her their finest dishes, refusing to let her pay for anything. The plate in front of her held perfectly seasoned salmon, roasted vegetables that looked like artwork, and bread so fresh it was still warm from the oven. But she could barely eat. Her mind was still spinning from everything that had happened. William Chen sat across from her along with Helen and Giovanni. They had been talking for over an hour, and Lily's head was full of information she could hardly process. "Tell me about your training again," William said gently. "You mentioned your grandmother taught you for 12 years? Lily nodded, taking a small bite of the salmon. It tasted better than anything she could remember. She was a piano teacher for 40 years before she retired. She taught at the music conservatory downtown until she was 70. "Rose Patterson?" Helen asked suddenly, her eyes widening. "Was your grandmother Rose Patterson? You knew her?" Lily asked, surprised. Helen laughed and shook her head in amazement. "Know her? Dear child, Rose Patterson was a legend. She taught half the professional pianists in this city. I took lessons from her myself when I was young, though I never had a fraction of her talent. William leaned forward. Rose Patterson was your grandmother? That explains everything. She was known for finding exceptional students and pushing them to their absolute limits. She found me when I was 5, Lily said softly. My mother had just died and I was living with Grandma Rose. She said I climbed onto her piano bench one day and started playing a melody I had heard on the radio. She knew right away that I was different. Different how? Giovanni asked, completely fascinated. I could hear music in my head all the time, Lily explained. Like there was an orchestra playing in my brain. Grandma Rose said it was called perfect pitch, but it was more than that. I could hear how pieces were supposed to sound. Before I even learned to play them, William and Helen exchanged meaningful glances. Lily, William said carefully, do you realize how rare that kind of ability is? Maybe one person in 10,000 has true perfect pitch. And to combine that with the technical skill you just displayed, that's extraordinary. Lily shrugged, feeling embarrassed by all the attention. Grandma Rose always said talent was just the starting point. She made me practice 4 hours every day even when I didn't want to. Especially when I didn't want to. 4 hours a day for 12 years, Helen murmured. That's more training than most professional musicians receive. What happened when she passed away? William asked gently. Lily's face darkened. Everything fell apart. Grandma Rose had been sick for a year, but she hid it from me. She wanted me to focus on my music, not worry about her cancer. When she died, I found out she had spent all her savings on my music lessons and her medical bills. She paused, struggling with the painful memories. I was supposed to start at the conservatory that fall. I had been accepted into their pre-college program. Full scholarship for tuition, but I still needed money for housing and food. Grandma Rose's house had to be sold to pay her debts. What about other family? Giovanni asked. There wasn't anyone else. The state put me in foster care, but the family I lived with, they didn't understand about music. They said practicing piano was too loud, that it bothered the neighbors. They made me stop. They made you stop playing completely? Helen asked, horrified. Lily nodded. They said I needed to focus on practical things, getting a job, learning useful skills. They thought music was a waste of time. William's hands clenched into fists on the table. Those people had no idea what they were destroying. I tried to keep practicing at school, but the music teacher only let students use the piano during scheduled class times. 15 minutes here and there wasn't enough. I could feel my skills getting rusty. Is that when you ended up on the streets? Helen asked softly. The foster family decided they didn't want me anymore after I turned 17. They said I was too old, too set in my ways. The state said I was an adult now and had to figure things out myself. Lily took another bite of food, trying to push down the emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. I got a job at a fast food place, but it barely paid enough for a tiny apartment. When I got sick and missed too many days of work, they fired me. I couldn't make rent, and suddenly I was living in my car. Then the car broke down and I couldn't afford to fix it. The table was quiet for a moment as everyone absorbed her story. 3 months, William said finally. You've been surviving on the streets for 3 months? It's not as bad as people think, Lily said quickly, not wanting their pity. I learned where the safe places are, where to find food. The library lets you stay inside during the day if you're quiet. At night there's a shelter, but it fills up fast. And you haven't played piano this whole time? Helen asked. Not until tonight. Sometimes I would sit outside music stores and listen to people playing inside. Or I'd find a church that left their doors open and sneak in to touch the keys for a few minutes before someone noticed me. Giovanni wiped his eyes with his napkin. Dio mio. Such a waste. Such a terrible waste. William pulled out his phone and showed Lily the screen. I recorded part of your performance tonight. I hope you don't mind, but I wanted to share it with some colleagues. On the phone, Lily could see herself at the piano, completely lost in the music. She looked different than she felt inside. On the screen, she looked like a real musician, not a homeless teenager. I sent this to several people, William continued, including the director of admissions at the conservatory. She called me back within 10 minutes. What did she say? Lily asked, her heart starting to race. She said they had been wondering what happened to Rose Patterson's granddaughter. Apparently your grandmother had told them all about you before she died. They had been expecting you to enroll, but when you never showed up, they assumed you had chosen a different school. Lily felt tears starting to form in her eyes. Grandma Rose told them about me? She told everyone about you, Helen said warmly. Rose was so proud of you, dear. She used to say you were going to be one of the great ones. William leaned across the table. Lily, I run a foundation that helps young musicians who have fallen through the cracks. Kids with incredible talent who just need someone to believe in them again. I want to help you. Help me how? Lily asked, afraid to hope. Housing, food, clothing, and most importantly, a chance to get back to your music. The conservatory still wants you. They're willing to offer you the same scholarship your grandmother arranged, plus housing and living expenses. Lily stared at him, unable to speak. But more than that, William continued, I think you're ready for something bigger. There's a young artists showcase next month at the concert hall downtown. It's where record labels and concert promoters come to discover new talent. I want to feature you as our main performer. You mean perform in front of real music industry people? Lily whispered. I mean launch your career, William said with a smile. Your grandmother always said you were destined for greatness. It's time the world found out she was right. For the first time in months, Lily allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, her dreams weren't dead after all. 6 weeks later, Lily stood backstage at the Grand Symphony Hall, her hands shaking as she smoothed down the elegant black dress that Helen had bought for her. Through the curtains, she could hear the murmur of 800 people settling into their seats. Tonight was the Young Artist Showcase, and she was the featured performer. The past month and a half had been like living in a dream. Williams Foundation had set her up in a small but comfortable apartment just blocks from the conservatory. She had her own bed, her own kitchen, and most importantly, her own piano. A beautiful upright that William had found at a music store, going out of business. The conservatory had welcomed her back with open arms. Her professors were amazed that she had retained so much of her skill despite months without practice. Muscle memory, her new teacher, Professor Martinez, had explained. When you've trained as intensively as you have, it becomes part of who you are. But tonight felt different from those cozy practice rooms. Tonight, there were music critics in the audience, record label executives, concert promoters who could change her entire life with a single phone call. You're going to do wonderfully, Helen said, appearing beside her with a warm smile. Over the past weeks, she had become like a second grandmother to Lily. It turned out Helen wasn't just any music lover. She was Helena Richardson, one of the most respected music critics in the country. Her review could make or break a career. What if I mess up? Lily whispered. What if my hands freeze up out there? Then you'll do what every great musician does, Helen said gently. You'll breathe, find your center, and let the music carry you through. Giovanni appeared on her other side, beaming with pride. He had closed his restaurant early so his entire staff could attend the concert. Even Tony and the other kitchen workers who had laughed at her were sitting in the front row, their faces full of excitement. Miss Lily, Giovanni said, his accent thick with emotion. You remember what you tell me that first night? You say music comes from the heart? Lily nodded. Tonight, you just open your heart and let everyone see what's inside. They going to love you. The stage manager approached them. 5 minutes, Miss Patterson. Patterson. She had legally changed her last name to honor her grandmother. Rose Patterson's granddaughter was finally ready to claim her place in the music world. As she walked toward the stage entrance, Lily passed a bulletin board covered with newspaper clippings. There was the article from the city paper with the headline, Local Teen's Incredible Journey from Streets to Stage. Next to it was a photo from the conservatory newsletter, showing her practicing in one of their studios. But the clipping that made her smile was a review Helen had written of her performance at Giovanni's. It simply said, In 30 years of covering music, I have rarely witnessed such raw talent combined with genuine artistry. This young woman is destined for greatness. The lights dimmed in the hall, and Lily heard the audience grow quiet. This was it? She walked onto the stage, and the applause was warm and encouraging. The spotlight was bright, but she could make out familiar faces in the front rows. William gave her a thumbs up. Giovanni was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. Even some of the conservatory students had come to support her. At the beautiful, grand piano center stage, Lily adjusted the bench and took a deep breath. She had chosen to play the same piece that had changed her life that night at the restaurant, Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor. "This piece," she said into the microphone, her voice steady despite her nerves, "was the last one my grandmother and I worked on together before she passed away. She always told me that music was a way to speak when words weren't enough. Tonight, I want to share her voice with all of you." She placed her hands on the keys and began to play. From the very first notes, something magical happened. All her nervousness disappeared. The audience, the bright lights, the pressure of the moment. It all faded away. There was only Lily, and the music and the memory of her grandmother's hands guiding hers when she was small. The ballad flowed from her fingers like water, each phrase perfectly shaped and full of meaning. She played with the technical precision that 12 years of training had given her. But more than that, she played with the emotional depth that came from having lost everything and found it again. During the gentle middle section, she could hear people in the audience holding their breath. The music spoke of hope rising from despair, of beauty emerging from pain. Several people were crying openly. When she reached the powerful final section, Lily threw herself into it completely. Her whole body moved with the music, every muscle engaged in bringing out the full force of Chopin's genius. The sound filled the concert hall like a thunderstorm, overwhelming and beautiful and impossible to ignore. The final notes rang out through the hall, and for a moment, the silence was so complete it felt sacred. Then the audience exploded. 800 people leaped to their feet, applauding and cheering and calling out, "Bravo!" The standing ovation went on for nearly 5 minutes. Lily took bow after bow, tears streaming down her face. As the applause finally died down, she noticed someone walking onto the stage. It was Dr. Catherine Wells, the director of the conservatory. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Wells said into the microphone, "what you have just witnessed is truly extraordinary. In my 40 years in music education, I have rarely encountered such a perfect combination of technical skill and emotional maturity." She turned to Lily. "Miss Patterson, on behalf of the Conservatory Board, I would like to formally offer you our most prestigious honor, a full fellowship in our graduate program with guaranteed performance opportunities and recording support." The audience erupted again. This was an honor usually reserved for students who had completed years of undergraduate study. But Dr. Wells wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I've just received word that Harmony Records would like to discuss a recording contract with you." Lily felt her knees go weak. Harmony Records was one of the biggest classical music labels in the world. As she left the stage, she was surrounded by people wanting to congratulate her, to offer her opportunities to be part of her musical journey. But through the crowd, she spotted William and Helen waiting patiently. "How does it feel?" William asked when she finally reached them. "Overwhelming," Lily said honestly. 6 weeks ago, I was sleeping in doorways. Now people are talking about recording contracts and concert tours. It doesn't feel real." "It's real," Helen said firmly. "And you've earned every bit of it. Your grandmother would be so proud." Later that night, after all the congratulations and business cards and promises of future collaborations, Lily sat alone in her apartment at her piano. She played softly, not wanting to disturb her neighbors but needing to feel the keys under her fingers one more time. On her music stand was a framed photo of her grandmother, taken during one of their last lessons together. Rose Patterson was smiling, her hands resting on the keys, looking at something beyond the camera. "We did it, Grandma," Lily whispered. "We really did it." Outside her window, the city lights twinkled like stars. Somewhere out there, other young musicians were practicing in small rooms, dreaming of their big break. Some of them, Lily knew, might be struggling just like she had. Sleeping rough, dismissed by people who couldn't see past their circumstances, to the talent underneath. She had already talked to William about starting a program to help those kids. Kids who just needed someone to listen, someone to give them a chance to show what they could do. Tomorrow, her new life would begin in earnest. There would be recording sessions and concert bookings and interviews with music magazines. But tonight, she just played for the joy of it, the way her grandmother had taught her all those years ago. The girl who had once begged to play for food had become a musician who could feed souls with her music. And that, she thought, was the most beautiful transformation of all.